Hey guys, welcome back to Small Doses of Insight. Alright dudes and dudettes, buckle up because we're diving deep into the psyche of Yukishiro Enishi, the main antagonist from the 2021 flick Rurouni Kenshin, The Final. This isn't your run-of-the-mill villain, so grab your swords or popcorn and let's slice through the enigma that is Enishi. First up, let's talk backstory. Enishi was just a kid chilling in feudal Japan with his big sister Tomoe after their mom passed away during his birth. Tomoe wasn't just his sister, she was basically his whole world, like a mother figure and best friend rolled into one. But then life said, nah, you don't get nice things. Tomoe marries Kenshin, the Batosai himself during the chaos of the Bakumatsu era. Spoiler alert, Kenshin accidentally kills her. And who's there to see it all go down? Little bro Enishi. Yeah, that kind of trauma doesn't just go away. It's like getting emotionally roundhouse kicked by fate. After Tomoe's death, Enishi leaves to Shanghai and this dude doesn't just sulk, he levels up. We're talking full-on revenge mode. He dives into the criminal world training in Wato Jutsu, a sword style that's straight up deadly. Oh, and let's not forget the hair. Dude goes from basic black to stark white, a glow up that screams, I'm coming for you, Kenshin. The transformation is real, my friends. Enishi didn't just stop at self-improvement, he built himself a revenge squad. Enter the Six Comrades, a gang of badasses, each with their own beef against Kenshin. Together, they plan Jinchu, which is basically let's ruin Kenshin's entire life in revenge speak. Their mission? Hit Kenshin where it hurts, his friends and loved ones. It's like a revenge party and everyone's invited except Kenshin. Let's get real for a second though. Enishi isn't just angry, he's wrecked. The dude's whole personality revolves around avenging Tomoe. But here's the kicker, his obsession blinds him to the bigger picture, like Tomoe's actual feelings and the fact that vengeance doesn't solve anything. This guy is walking proof that unresolved trauma turns even the chillest bros into absolute wrecking balls. The final battle? Oh man, it's not just swords clashing, it's two completely different ideologies going head to head. Kenshin's trying to atone for his past while Enishi's like, nah bro, you're gonna pay for it. It's emotional, it's intense, and it hits harder than finishing a life-changing K-drama. Every slash of the sword carries the weight of their shared history and you're just sitting there losing your mind over the stakes. Here's the wild part. By the end, there's this tiny glimmer of hope for Enishi. Dude starts to realize that maybe all this revenge isn't really doing him any favors. Let's start by calling a spade a spade. Enishi is extra. He's the guy who doesn't just burn a bridge. He dynamites it, dances in the flames, and blames the ashes for ruining his day. But why? Simple. Dude is trapped in a feedback loop of pain and rage. Unlike Kenshin, who strives to atone for his sins, Enishi's strategy is to build an empire of revenge and weaponize it against the guy he blames for his misery. Pretty hardcore, but also tragically short-sighted. Enishi's behavior is the result of a psychological phenomenon called displaced aggression. Instead of addressing his grief over Tomoe's death and the reality of her choices, he channels all his energy into destroying Kenshin. It's like losing in Mario Kart and smashing your controller instead of just admitting you drove into a banana peel. His refusal to acknowledge his sister's agency or reconcile her love for Kenshin shows his arrested emotional development. For Enishi, it's easier to hate Kenshin than face the complexity of Tomoe's choices and his own helplessness. Enishi is obsessed with control, over his life, over others, and most tragically, over Tomoe's memory. He literally builds a criminal empire just to prove he's got the power to dismantle Kenshin's world. His obsession with dominance isn't just a personality quirk, it's a defense mechanism. Losing Tomoe shattered his sense of agency, and revenge becomes his way of regaining it. It's a twisted logic, but hey, we all cope in weird ways. I, for one, eat my feelings with an entire bowl of pho. No judgment here. Enishi's relationships, or lack thereof, are another goldmine for analysis. Whether it's his bond with Tomoe, his dynamic with Kenshin, or his interactions with the Six Comrades, Enishi's connections are steeped in emotional extremes. Let's break them down. To Enishi, Tomoe isn't just a sister. She's a symbol of purity, love, and stability. His idealization of her borders on unhealthy. Tomoe becomes a fixation for him, and her death transforms her into a martyr for his vengeance. The tragedy is that Enishi doesn't see Tomoe as a complete person with her own agency. Instead, she's frozen in his memory as the perfect sibling, a role she never asked for. This idealization fuels his inability to move on because letting go would mean acknowledging her flaws and, by extension, his own. Inishi's attachment to Tomoe can be analyzed through the concept of the Oedipus complex. While there's no romantic implication, his overdependence on her as a maternal figure, thanks to absent mom, creates a psychological void when she's gone. It's like building your whole personality around your favorite band only to find out they broke up. Cue existential crisis. Inishi's relationship with Kenshin is the crux of his arc. What makes their dynamic so compelling is that they're two sides of the same coin. Both are haunted by their past, but while Kenshin chooses redemption, Enishi chooses destruction. It's the classic Batman vs. Joker dichotomy, except with swords, and Inishi's got way cooler hair. Enishi doesn't just want to kill Kenshin, he wants to make him feel. This emotional warfare reveals Inishi's deep-seated need for validation. If Kenshin suffers, it justifies Inishi's own pain. It's twisted logic, sure, but also deeply human. Who among us hasn't wanted our ex to feel just a little regret? No? Just me? Cool. Inishi's posse, the 6 comrades, are more than just henchmen. They're a reflection of his fractured psyche. Each member represents a facet of Inishi's own pain and resentment, making them less like colleagues and more like a walking support group. The irony? Despite their shared vendetta, Enishi keeps them at arm's length, further isolating himself. It's like starting a band but refusing to jam because you're too busy writing emo lyrics in your room. Inishi's master plan, Jinchu, or Human Punishment, is his magnum opus. It's revenge on steroids, targeting not just Kenshin but everyone he loves. The strategy is diabolical, but it also reeks of desperation. By focusing on Kenshin's friends and family, Enishi reveals his own loneliness. He doesn't just want to hurt Kenshin, he wants to dismantle the support system he himself lacks. Inishi's Jinchu philosophy aligns with a concept called resentiment, not resentment. His moral worldview is defined by his suffering, and his actions are an attempt to invert the power dynamic that left him powerless. In layman's terms, I suffered, so now it's your turn. One of Inishi's most significant choices is his refusal to accept Tomoe's love for Kenshin. He clings to the idea that Kenshin stole her from him, ignoring the reality that Tomoe made her own decisions. This denial isn't just stubbornness, it's a coping mechanism. Admitting the truth would force Enishi to confront his own insignificance in the grand scheme of things. Instead, he constructs a narrative where he's the hero avenging a wronged victim. It's delusional, but hey, we all tell ourselves stories to sleep at night. Unlike some villains who stay static, looking at you, Voldemort, Enishi undergoes subtle development. By the end of Rurouni Kenshin, the final, he begins to confront the emptiness of his actions. This shift is most evident in his final moments, where he spares Kenshin and allows himself to be arrested. It's not a full redemption arc, but it's a step in the right direction. Inishi's turning point comes during his climactic battle with Kenshin. When confronted with Kenshin's willingness to accept his punishment, Enishi is forced to reckon with his own motives. Kenshin's acceptance of guilt and desire to atone contrasts sharply with Inishi's refusal to let go of his pain. It's a powerful moment that underscores the difference between vengeance and redemption. Inishi's choice to surrender suggests a newfound vulnerability. By admitting defeat, he takes his first step toward healing. It's like finally going to therapy after years of denial. It's hard, humbling, and ultimately liberating. Inishi's story is a cautionary tale about the cycle of violence. His quest for vengeance perpetuates the very pain he seeks to escape. This theme is a cornerstone of Rurouni Kenshin, and Enishi embodies it to the fullest. His inability to break the cycle contrasts with Kenshin's effort to create a future free from bloodshed. It's a stark reminder that forgiveness isn't just noble, it's necessary. Inishi's arc is also a meditation on grief and how it shapes us. His refusal to process his emotions leaves him trapped in the past, unable to move forward. It's a relatable struggle. Who hasn't been stuck in a rut after losing something or someone important? Inishi's journey reminds us that while grief is inevitable, it doesn't have to define us. Yo, let's get real for a second. If there's one thing Yukishiro Enishi's story teaches us, it's that vengeance isn't just about sharpening your sword, it's about dulling your soul. The psychological toll this dude endures and inflicts is a whole saga in itself. And if we're being honest, it's the kind of emotional chaos that would make even the most chill bro need a week-long beach retreat with bottomless mojitos. So in this part of our deep dive into Enishi, we're peeling back the layers to explore the impact of his journey and how it echoes through the film.
お前が姉の仇を討とうとする気持ち、それは至極当然だ。
First off, let's talk about grief. Inishi's constant companion, his toxic best bro. Losing Tomoe was more than just heartbreaking, it was soul-shattering. But the thing is, grief can either become a teacher or a tormentor, and Enishi went all in on the tormentor option. This guy never learned to sit with his emotions or process them in a healthy way. Therapy wasn't exactly booming in 19th century Japan. Instead, he clung to his pain like it was the last slice of pizza at a party. Psychologically, Inishi's refusal to grieve properly led to a phenomenon known as complicated grief. It's that unprocessed emotional wound that festers over time, twisting into anger, obsession, and, in Inishi's case, full-blown revenge plots. Instead of facing his loss, he built an entire identity around it. His psyche essentially became a shrine to Tomoe, but not in a peaceful, reflective way, more like a haunted house with knives flying everywhere kind of way. Let's not forget the psychological toll of building your whole persona around revenge. Enishi didn't just mourn Tomoe, he turned her into the axis of his existence. And if your sole purpose is vengeance, guess what happens if you succeed? You're left with nothing. Nada. Zilch. It's like training for a marathon, crossing the finish line and realizing there's no medal or even a post-run beer. This is what is known as identity foreclosure. Enishi locked himself into a narrow sense of self defined solely by his vendetta. He never asked the big "what now" questions because his entire mental energy was funneled into one goal. It's a trap that's easy to fall into. Heck, I've spiraled into existential dread over much smaller things, like losing my favorite hoodie. Enishi wasn't just a grieving brother, he was a boss, a criminal kingpin ruling Shanghai's underworld. And let's be real, being the head honcho isn't exactly a stress-free gig. Coordinating a gang of misfits, hello six comrades, and running a criminal empire while plotting intricate revenge, that's enough to fry anyone's brain. One of the biggest impacts of Inishi's role as a leader was the sheer mental exhaustion of managing others while staying focused on his vendetta. The six comrades were useful, sure, but they were also liabilities, each with their own traumas and agendas. It's like being the captain of the dodgeball team, except half your players are blindfolded and the balls are on fire. This dynamic took a toll on Inishi's mental health. Instead of being surrounded by genuine allies, he was surrounded by mirrors reflecting his own pain and anger. That kind of toxic environment can intensify isolation, even when you're technically surrounded by people. If there's one thing Enishi excels at, besides swordsmanship and rocking that Shanghai look, it's burying his emotions deeper than a bro hiding his feelings during Lovely Runner. But emotional repression isn't strength, it's a ticking time bomb. Inishi's inability to express vulnerability made him a prisoner of his own rage. Anger is often described as a secondary emotion, a cover-up for deeper feelings like sadness, fear, or helplessness. Enishi wears his anger like armor, shielding himself from the crushing weight of his grief. But the thing about armor? It's heavy. Carrying that around for years takes a psychological toll, wearing him down from the inside out. It's like trying to flex all day long. You'll look strong for a while, but eventually your arms are gonna give out. Let's pivot to the impact of Inishi's relationships, or lack thereof. His connections with Tomoe, Kenshin, and his crew reveal a guy who's emotionally stunted but still deeply affected by the bonds he either maintains or destroys. Tomoe's death didn't just scar Enishi, it rewired his entire worldview. Her memory became his guiding star, but not in the hopeful Disney-esque kind of way. Instead, she was a constant reminder of his perceived failure and the injustice he felt. This fixation created a feedback loop where every action Enishi took was a desperate attempt to honor her memory, or what he imagined her memory to be. Kenshin isn't just a rival, he's Inishi's psychological punching bag. By obsessing over Kenshin, Enishi avoids confronting his own shortcomings. But here's the kicker, the rivalry is also a twisted form of intimacy. Kenshin is the only person who truly understands the depth of Inishi's pain, even if they process it differently. It's like those frenemies who secretly push each other to be better, or worse in this case. Inishi's psychological journey is a case study in the cost of revenge. And spoiler alert, it ain't cheap. His vendetta drains him emotionally, mentally, and even physically. By the time he confronts Kenshin, he's essentially a shell of a person, a man who's poured every ounce of himself into a cause that can never truly satisfy him. Here's the tragic irony of revenge. It rarely provides the closure that people think it will. Inishi's quest for vengeance is fueled by the belief that Kenshin's suffering will heal his own wounds. But when he finally faces Kenshin, he realizes that pain doesn't cancel out pain. If anything, it just amplifies it. It's the equivalent of drinking salt water to quench your thirst. While Enishi doesn't get a full-blown redemption arc, his decision to surrender at the end of the film hints at a shift in his psyche. For the first time, he acknowledges the senselessness of his actions and begins to confront his own pain. Admitting defeat isn't just a tactical choice for Enishi, it's an emotional one. By sparing Kenshin and submitting to justice, he takes the first step toward breaking the cycle of violence. It's a small victory, but for someone as deeply scarred as Enishi, it's monumental. So what can we learn from Inishi's journey? Besides the obvious don't build your entire life around revenge, there are some deeper takeaways here. Suppressing emotions might feel macho, but it's a recipe for disaster. Inishi's refusal to deal with his grief turned him into a ticking time bomb. Lesson learned, it's okay to cry, even if you're a sword-wielding badass. Inishi's story is a stark reminder that revenge rarely brings closure. True healing comes from acceptance and forgiveness, not from lashing out. And hey, it's probably cheaper too. Even at his lowest point, Enishi finds a glimmer of hope. His decision to surrender shows that no one is beyond redemption. It's a comforting thought for anyone who's ever felt stuck in their own mistakes or bad haircut choices. Alright, bros and broettes, let's wrap up this epic dive into Yukishiro Enishi with a killer question. Because what's a deep conversation without the existential cherry on top? Here it is. What would we do in Inishi's shoes? Would we let our grief define us, or would we find another way? Heavy stuff, right? But hey, it's worth pondering, especially since Rurouni Kenshin the final doesn't just serve sword-swinging action. It's a mirror held up to humanity's darkest tendencies. Before you answer, let's take a step back. Imagine you're in Inishi's spot. You lose someone who means everything to you. Not just the person you love, but someone who gave your life meaning. Someone who made the world make sense. And then they're gone. Not because of some random tragedy, but because of another person's actions. That rage, that hole in your chest, you'd feel it too. Inishi's reaction, revenge, rage, and complete obliteration of his own identity feels extreme at first glance. But is it really? Grief does weird things, man. It's not like there's a handbook for handling soul-crushing loss, and even if there were, I'd probably lose it in my car. Wouldn't most of us want someone to blame? And if we had the skills, the resources, and the sheer determination of Enishi, would we channel that pain into destruction too? Inishi's entire philosophy revolves around the idea that making Kenshin suffer equals justice. It's the old eye for an eye approach, except in his case, it's more like a village for an eye. But here's the kicker. Does revenge ever truly bring justice, or is it just a hollow substitute for healing? Let's be honest, deep down, Enishi knows his revenge isn't going to bring Tomoe back. But that's the trap of vengeance. It tricks you into thinking it'll fill the void when really, it's just dumping gasoline on a fire. It's like binge watching a show to distract yourself from real life problems. Sure, it feels good in the moment, but when the credits roll, you're still sitting in the dark with your existential dread. So here's the gut check moment. Would we fall for the same trap? Would we buy into the lie that making someone else suffer will heal our own pain? Or would we find a way to break the cycle like Kenshin eventually does? Spoiler alert, breaking cycles is hard. I still haven't broken the one where I eat a whole bag of shrimp chips by myself whenever I'm sad. One of the biggest lessons from Inishi's arc is the power of choice. Even when life kicks us in the teeth, we still get to decide how we respond. Kenshin chooses redemption, even though his past is just as bloody and traumatic as Inishi's. Enishi chooses destruction because, let's face it, destruction feels easier. Building something new? That takes work, vulnerability, and a level of emotional maturity that most of us, me included, can barely muster. This is where the story forces us to reflect on ourselves. How many times have we fed the cycle of negativity because it felt easier than doing the hard work of healing? Maybe it's holding on to grudges, avoiding apologies, or staying mad at your roommate for stealing your last beer. I'm looking at you, Brad. The truth is, every time we choose anger over growth, we're walking Inishi's path, just on a smaller scale. What makes Enishi such a compelling character is that he's not a cartoonish villain twirling his mustache. He's a mirror. His pain, his choices, and even his failures resonate because they're so deeply human. Sure, most of us don't form criminal empires or challenge legendary swordsmen, but we've all wrestled with loss, anger, and the temptation to let our worst impulses take the wheel. At its core, Inishi's journey is about control. After losing Tomoe, he feels powerless, so he constructs a world where he calls the shots. Sound familiar? A lot of us try to control our environments when life feels chaotic, whether it's micromanaging stuff, obsessing over social media likes, or writing a 4,000-ish word video essay to avoid dealing with your feelings. Totally not me. The point is, Enishi's struggle isn't foreign. It's amplified, sure, but it's relatable. By the end of the film, we're left with a burning question. Is Enishi redeemable? And if he is, what does that say about the rest of us? The movie doesn't spoon-feed us an answer, which is why it hits so hard. It forces us to confront the idea that even our worst choices don't have to define us if we're willing to change. Inishi's decision to surrender at the end isn't just a tactical move, it's a seed of possibility. It suggests that even someone as broken and consumed by rage as Enishi can find a way out of the darkness. But it's not a guarantee. Redemption, like healing, is a choice you have to make every day. And let's be real, choosing to heal isn't exactly glamorous. It's messy, awkward, and usually involves crying in your car while Taylor Swift blares in the background. Not that I'm speaking from experience or anything. Here's the real kicker. If Enishi can start the path to redemption, what's stopping us? If this white-haired ball of rage and trauma can step back from the edge, maybe there's hope for all of us to face our demons, make amends, and I don't know, stop tilting at League of Legends every time support steals your blue. The point is, Inishi's story isn't just a tragedy, it's a challenge. It asks us to confront our own cycles of pain and anger, to question whether we're feeding them or breaking them. And yeah, it's uncomfortable as hell, but if Enishi can do it after everything he's been through, what excuse do we have? So here's the challenge. The next time life throws you a curveball, ask yourself this. Are you going to be an Enishi, or are you going to be a Kenshin? Are you going to let anger and pain run the show, or are you going to find a way to rise above it? It's not easy, but let's be real, neither is life. And honestly, if Inishi's story teaches us anything, it's that even when you hit rock bottom, there's still a way up. Your move, bro. Yukishiro Enishi is the kind of character that sticks with you and keeps you up at night at 2 a.m. He's not just a villain. He's a tragic anti-hero whose choices, relationships, and development paint a nuanced portrait of pain and perseverance. Sure, he's got issues, but who doesn't? But beneath the chaos and carnage lies a deeply human story about love, loss, and the struggle to let go. And honestly, if Enishi can take that first step toward healing, maybe I can finally stop rage quitting League of Legends. Progress is progress, my dudes. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to process my own unresolved trauma, starting with that time I lost my favorite hoodie. Thanks everyone for watching this video. If you enjoyed what you saw, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. Also, be sure to check out my other videos for more insight on other dramas and shows. Your support means a lot to me and it helps me grow this channel. If you have any thoughts, questions, or suggestions for future videos, please drop them in the comments down below. Again, thank you for watching this video and I'll see you next time.